We're having a very much needed education conversation, as many days as we need to have it in this country. Joining us this hour is FM Boaz Waruku, who is a strategy and policy advisor at Elimu Bora Working Group. He's no stranger to the hot seat, and he's here to warm things up again for us this morning. Good morning, Boaz.
Good morning, Drew. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Happy to see you, and thanks for inviting me again here.
Well, thank you for being here.
Happy to see my colleagues also, City, and Eric. I could still see him there, but I've seen Ken also here.
This is it.
It's okay, thank you.
Eric normally does a walkabout. He gets in his car and he just goes places.
I'm informed.
So, but this time he decided to do a global walkabout. So let's hear the stories he'll tell us when he's back.
That's good, that's good.
And even while that's going on, education has a few more fires under its behind than it did before in the country. And I've said from a very long time ago that there's a crisis that's been brewing. Yeah. And I think now we're looking at the thing full on. And so that's the conversation that we're having this hour. So we're very glad that you're here to have that with us today.
The only fire we require in education is that cooks food for the children.
Indeed, that's the only fire we require. But unfortunately, others of a more dangerous nature are happening.
Thank you.
Let's welcome you properly before we get into it. City has proverbs from one of my favorite countries on the continent. But I guess I'll let him tell you the details and then you can tell us how you would interpret it.
Well, proverbs for last week, this week, and the next 2 weeks will be from African countries that border the oceans, whether it's the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. This week, we are in the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire, formerly known as Ivory Coast. It's at the southern coast of West Africa. Its largest city is known as Abidjan. Does anybody know what the capital city is? Not you. You don't answer that question.
I can't answer.
Okay.
Which
one? Capital city.
It's not Abidjan?
Nope.
It's just the largest city.
All along I've thought it's Abidjan.
Most people think that when they're wrong.
Sorry. It's a okay. This thing of francophone, lusophone.
It's francophone.
No idea if it's not Abidjan. No idea.
Okay. Please let me tell them. Yamoussoukro. Yamoussoukro.
Yamoussoukro.
Yes, that is the capital.
I think that's even the first time I've heard that name.
No way.
I've heard it.
There are many countries on this continent that have the largest city, which at a previous time was actually
the capital. Yeah.
But then they changed the capital later on to.
Yes. They did the same thing in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire that they did in Lagos, with Lagos and Abuja. It went from Abidjan to Yamoussoukro. Yeah. Dar es Salaam, Dodoma.
Should take ours to Garissa.
Same idea. Or Isiolo.
Kenya, Nairobi, that sort of thing.
Actually, don't take it to a well-established place. Just take it to Mai Mahiu and establish.
No, that's too near. Let's take to Garissa.
I was looking at somewhere central.
No. Isiolo.
Okay.
We'll be commuting.
Actually, Isiolo is the most centrist place in this country. If you talk about the center of the country,
so Isiolo it is.
Let's take it to Isiolo.
So Isiolo it is.
Yes.
We'll collect signatures.
I'll vote for president who will take the capital
to Isiolo.
We'll collect signatures.
Voila.
Direct the president to do so. Sorry.
The eye does not eat the orange, but it knows it is sweet.
The real orange that we know, that chungwa.
Orange, machungwa, as people from your neck of the woods they call it machungwa. They're referring to one orange.
Machunga.
Machungwa, mbili.
Anything is machunga. The eye. The eye is the very first, being sensitive to disability, because even those with disability also appreciate the sweetness of the orange. But the very first thing is you look at an orange and you can, if you're passing through the trees where they are still hanging, you'll know which one to pick. And the one that looks ripe, it's gotten that color, the orange color, then you'll say this one is good, because then it triggers your senses of tastes and the sweetness that you anticipate begin to feel
from
it.
One of the senses.
So I would agree with them when they say that I think it starts from there. It starts from just seeing, and then you'll believe that the content should be okay. Yeah. So City, I know you'd ask me how I interpret it in my life and all that.
That is precisely what I'm going to do.
Yes.
Yes. And thank you for preempting me.
Oh, okay. I would be thinking that actually the Kiswahili speakers also use the orange in another version. They say when you see it ripe and ready, know that it has been developed. You can speak it better in Kiswahili.
What's developed in
Why are you
Kiswahili?
looking at me?
It's been well
He
developed.
pointed at you.
But I just want to say that what it tries to give me a picture of having faith or trust in the process, so that then you'll be able to say, okay, if I see this process is good as this, then the content of the product outcome should be okay. You can even relate it to what is happening within the unions right now. In that process where they are supposed to be dealing with the negotiations, discussing CBAs, then finally they should be able to trust that at the end of it, that chungwa should be ripe, sweet, and they'll enjoy when they take it. Unfortunately, it never turns out to be the same.
Be that way.
Yeah.
Good interpretation, I would say. So even as we then get into, because there's a myriad of issues that is affecting the education sector today. If it's not one thing, it's the other, isn't it?
Yes.
So if we just give a little bit of a recap, here we have an education sector where just a few years ago the curriculum changed, and then we see the phasing out of certain things. Let's just look at what last year we had the final Kenya Certificate of Primary Education. The KCP was the last one, and that particular last group, incidentally, will also be the last group of the KCSC, which will take place in 2027. So we saw that phase out. We are seeing STEM schools, rather we are seeing pathway schools then being established around about 2025, 2026. We are seeing that the curriculum will take on a different assessment. And it goes on like that. We see that the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms went around the country and did what they did. A funding model for universities has come up that has caused ruckus everywhere. Not very happy with that. Before you could even shut your eyes, the JSS teachers then who had to straddle between secondary school and primary school said, hang on a minute, we were just interns. You've not given us a position. Give us a position or we will not teach. But they were critical in making sure that the transition then between junior school and senior school was actually one worth its worth the paper upon which the proposal was written on. Before that even happened, they said, first of all, if you're not going to make us teachers, we are not going to come to work. Again, a critical function in the development of this curriculum. And then other teachers and unions said, well, we actually support them. If you don't hire them, we also will withdraw our services. It was not a threat because we are currently living in that reality. Capitation, which was not complete for term 1, 2024, started coming in dribbles. Then we got a new education minister, rather a secretary, cabinet secretary, and then things seem to start moving and then not move. All of these things happening in the education sector at the same time in the same country, to me, seems like a crisis or even several crises happening at the same time. Boaz, where are we?
Thank you, Ndu. How I wish that a time will come when I'll be coming to the studio so that we celebrate education. How I wish, because it is possible. I just don't know why it can't happen within this short period of time that we see. And indeed, Ndu, I came early. I was seated just out there, and I received 2 messages. On my way, I received other messages, not related, but 2 messages there. One, my child is back at home, school fees. The other one, I was given an alert up to 3rd of September. If they don't clear, this happens. Those are the messages I've received from parents. you can tell the kind of trauma some of us go through when you encounter such situation. First thing in the morning, it's almost a normal thing. I don't know. I think we should be asking ourselves as a country, do we really want to fix education? Because the issues that we've been discussing, we've been repeating ourselves. And you put it very well. I would start from where just after the election of 2022, everybody knew that we needed to do something in education. Indeed, the current president signed a charter, education charter, that articulated what they wanted to do. And, among other things, they said there's a problem with CBC, particularly at the lower level, when it was still picking up. I'll try to fix it. He talked about, I'll fix the issue because of the staffing. He said that, of course, I know the gap is huge. In as much as TSC was giving different figures, the unions also had figures, but on average, the gap we had was about 150,000 to ensure that we are able to roll out and completely enable CBC to run. At the time, the discussion was also that, we are really transitioning from the 844 to CBC. And with that transition, we want to expose our students, our learners early in life to practical skills, so that when they eventually leave whichever level, they are people who are able to cater for for the needs of the society and for themselves. And in other words, they needed to deal with how do we transform our schools into learning centers with the equipment, the infrastructure required, all those. Unfortunately, what happened? Okay, let me start with the very fortunate thing is when President Ruto came into power, he established that 49 plus task working party of Munavu, Professor Munavu, and that working party worked for 6 months, added more time, and finally the report was there. But even before the report was there, there are some incremental recommendations. The first one is let's domicile JSS in primary. And that was done, that's December, just before January. And, you remember the charter that the president had signed had actually poked holes into how the CBC was running. And indeed, among the things that was being canvassed, first he wanted to scrap it so that we actually get back to 844, so that we reorganize on how to transition to a better, if needed, a better system. So by the time of talking of ensuring that now we only have, let's domicile the JSS in primary, I don't know what informed that. Actually, that's part of we started raising lots of questions as Elimu, Bora and other actors. And what questions we were most importantly concerned with is JSS as CBC packages it. Is that period which I can only equate to the system that City went through. I'm in the lot of the 844 City, you might not know.
You are?
I'm the third group of 844.
And that 844 is really old.
Third group is 88, 89?
That was the one that
actually,
joined from one.
Right, because the 844 system found when I was actually a teacher.
Yes.
Yes, I graduated from university. I was actually teaching.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm saying at that time I would equate it to the O level. JSS would be the O level that would allow you then to start thinking. Because I joined from one to St. Mary's Yala. I have to mention that. Sorry.
I'm in good company.
I'm sorry. I just can't resist that. I'm sorry. I joined Form 1, and then I saw, those study rooms, MPC, manpower combination, maths, chemistry, physics, maths, biology, chemistry, math, those categorizations, And then, of course, the arts, because Yala had an all-inclusive, the sciences, and then the arts. And you could see that indeed that was working. Of course, even as we went through 844, we actually accessed some of those books that the A-levels were using. So I would equate JSS to that O-level. Because with that time, I would say, we would go to the laboratories at Form 1, and you're exposed to a lot of things. Just basic chemicals, just chemical reactions, just going to do a little of dissection in the laboratory, biology labs, the juniors, because we were not allowed to the seniors, So at that time, in other words, you are already being exposed to this. That can only happen in secondary schools. When the domiciling of JSS happened in primary, where I know, not anything closer to a laboratory exists. Nothing like a workshop and all that. And then I went to the blueprint of what the CBC was. Then I said, so is the theory equal to the practice? Or are the proposition equal to what is being practiced? And two, I realized it was not. Sorry, Ken. But then let me just summarize quickly, because there are lots of things and do actually scoped it more widely. You realize that also at the time the teachers themselves, the JSS had no teachers. So you find the president celebrating Jamhuri, and he said, for the first time I've recruited 57,000 teachers.
Yes.
His understanding of recruitment is different from the practical understanding.
What is that? Recruiting teachers, you are a teacher, you get a job, you go teach.
Trained teachers as trainees, interns. He deployed some of them. They've not been recruited up to now. As we speak.
What does recruitment mean?
The recruitment, for me, I'll go to what the TSC Act should be saying, starting from the Constitution 237. It is the TSC, first they register, then they recruit and deploy. And they're supposed to recruit and deploy the trained teachers that they have registered, not anybody else. In other words, first, you see, the entry point is they registered trained teachers.
Yes.
So those that they have registered are the ones that they deploy, and they are fully trained teachers. They should be deployed according to the scheme, the terms of service that are prevailing. So this crazy thing that the president came up with and said we are going to he's talked of recruiting teachers, but he deployed interns. For me, I found that was very strange, because even up to date, you've seen that now those JSS, they were first deployed for 1 year. Then their contract was extended by another year. Now it is being extended from August to December, because they have been promised that come January, they'll now be properly recruited as permanent and pensionable. In fact, because I've been, as Elimu Bora, we've also been having consultations with them. We've had a look at what existed as that contract. It was a 1 year self-terminating contract, meaning that it was not supposed to be continued. Anyway, let me not get just to the details, because I think the picture I was trying to bring is we say something, but what we mean is different. And particularly at that time when you have the number of JSS teachers who were deployed, but there were only 2 per school. The numbers of students, they are huge, but they don't have the necessary equipment I've mentioned. No laboratory, no workshops, no nothing. And even the equipment therein and chemicals, none. But then,
and this is for the majority of schools around the country?
Majority of the schools. Let me give you an example of, I think, the Kilifi school where, I will not mention that this is where the Secretary General of the JSS comes from, because he's trained in CRE and business studies. But he's the one who was now helping these students to learn sciences and all. And we were just asking, how do you must be very creative. You say, no, we only help them to make notes and understand things.
They say teachers are generally taught how to teach. They are not taught specific subjects. They are trained.
That's part of it.
That's part of it. You're taught how to teach.
Yes, you're talking methodology. There's also the aspect of how it is you need to consume, understand content, and then disseminate it.
Yes.
So that's the other side.
So if I trained in history, you give me chemistry, I will have an idea of what I need to do, but I will not execute it as well as I should.
Okay.
And two, just remember there are only two. But they are also expected to go to those rubrics and look at how each student is performing there and say they meet expectations, approaching all those kind of assessments.
Yeah.
So basically, we sat with those teachers and there was completely nothing going on in those schools. As we speak now, that situation hasn't been rectified. And that's at the basic education level. Sorry to skim through and jump to other areas. But now look at the higher education level. The new model, funding model, even its introduction was cantankerous. You introduce it first, I think that was supposed to be the second interim report that the president was to receive. He received that report and told these guys, this is not what I expected from you. Of course, and I think as Elimu Bora, we issued statements at that time. We said this guy is not telling the truth. There's no single president who goes to a presidential function not having interacted with the core material that is supposed to launch. That doesn't happen. He is debriefed. He is helped. In fact, his talking points are extracted from there. So we said, this guy needs to be called out, and we did so. And after he told those people, go back, I expect something, I think he called the media, and some of you guys, I think you must have been there, and told them, now, this is the new model. I like it to what Donald Trump says. It has never been done anywhere before.
Right.
It works best. Sorry to use that. But when he did so, the very first thing is we asked, where did that come from?
Actually, where did it come from?
He had already told the other guys to go and rethink. But here he's unveiling one. Two, at the time, COOPS, Kenya University and Colleges Central Placement Services and the attendant agencies were told, hold on, please, do not open the portal for the students, the 2022 students, to start applying. So, in other words, those portals were closed because they wanted to upload the new model. This new model came with crazy fee structures.
Where did it come from? I have to ask this question again.
Yes, we are still asking also ourselves where it came from. And indeed, first we are not just even, it can be okay. City, if you are ailing in a village, at times I go, my home is on a mountain, and I said there could be unwell. If you bring me a medicine that I take and I feel okay, it can be okay. I wouldn't even mind asking the details of where did it come from. But when you're coming with a drug and nothing is even happening, in fact, it's bringing more trouble to my life, I'll start asking those detailed questions.
Right.
So what happened is none of us knew where that came from. And as we speak now, because we also do research, I'll tell you that there are some students who opened those portals and didn't go back.
This is true.
Because 50,000 for medicine, for example, and different figures for different colleges and universities, some, even when they are being told, now you can report, we've agreed that everyone come. Even fair to reach those universities because they actually need some of this money. Some who went there stayed for a whole semester. There are those that, as we speak now, are back home because they could not transition. They were not able to get the exam card. Universities introduce those exam cards that you must clear fees and all. And the fees you're supposed to clear includes even what the government is supposed to remit on your behalf. To the
I wanted to take a break at this point, Waruku, because, we are here and it is obvious that there are problems. It doesn't matter.
I thought there was a liberation.
Yeah.
I don't want this.
It's clear that wherever you look, the problems are all over the place as concerns the education sector. But then here we are saying what is being done about it. There are organizations that are invested in education in this country whose role, whose mandate, executed or otherwise, is to actually ensure, is to push, is to advocate for that the ministry, that the government is doing what it is supposed to do. And so we're asking those questions about where are those individuals? Where is Elimu Bora? Where are those who need to be insisting that actually, guys, this is not on. It cannot be happening in the way in which it's happening, because the sub-stories that we are hearing, they continue. We'll take a break and come back and discuss that right after this, because now we need to ask and say, okay, we're in the mess. How is it going to be sorted out? We'll be back after this.
I think solutions are better.
The FM Boaz Waruku is the strategy and policy advisor at Elimu Bora working groups that are invested in the education progression in this country. It's been established. We can tell stories till the cows come home about how bad things are with the education sector in this country. But the question is, what are we going to do about it? And there it is, that there are groups, stakeholders that are invested, such as Elimu, and we have to ask, what are we going to do? It's not possible that you have a public system that doesn't take care of the attendees. It's not possible at whatever level that things are so bad that, and we say, well, we're going to throw some capitation at it and maybe throw some words at it and hope that, the frog becomes a prince. How?
Thank you, Ndu. Quick things that we need to bring out also. There are many agencies that are at work and trying really to help stabilize education. Elimu Bora, as you've said, of course, it is a grouping that includes several others, including Kenya Human Rights Commission. WASU is a member among the unions. We have WASU there. And the fact of the matter is we do a lot of research that informs some of those policy briefs we share with the people responsible, because the state agencies are responsible to ensure that these things are implemented according to, the constitution and the legislations that are in place. Like right now, I think Elimu Bora is in July, we took this higher education funding to court. In fact, as of today, that matter has not been resolved. We took it because it was so rushed, and we were saying there are certain parameters that needed to be dealt with first before you could even talk of changing a funding model that probably was not working so well but could be improved and made better. But when you did a total overhaul, you are bringing a lot more disaster, and that is the disaster we are faced with. Unfortunately, several others, particularly those in the government or public service, you will rarely find them telling you openly how they're suffering. Like the vice chancellors, when the funding model was being unleashed, the president was with them. But silently, they are crying how they are not even receiving the money. Even the other time, the town hall, the rehearsed town hall, they more or less endorsed that things have improved. But you ask yourself, how can things be improving when they are not receiving the money? Which magic or wand are they using? So the element of just being truthful to plans that we put on paper, I think that could help us. The aspect of this financing has really been a headache to us. Financing in that and as much as education receives what people call the lion's share, for us in Elimu Bora, we say it's still not even sufficient, because we need to prioritize it and put a lot more resources there. Because when we get it right and our learners, our children get well educated, that quality education, better things will happen.
I have to stop you there, Waruku. 600 billion shillings.
It's 640 billion.
There you go. 640 billion shillings.
Yes.
Every year.
Yes.
Every year.
Yes.
Not shared for the 5 years of a presidency.
No, every year.
Every year, 640 billion shillings is set aside for education in this country. Is allocated.
Yes.
Whether it is actually
now,
used,
there you go,
is a very, very different question.
There you go.
But let's let's live in utopian reality for a minute and say that 640 billion shillings set aside for education in the country from the very basic. Okay, maybe not because we know that
the county
ECD is taken care of at the county level, right?
Yes.
But let's take from primary school up until university. When we talk education, that 640 billion shillings that has been allocated is supposed to be there. I prefer that 650 billion shillings, if properly allocated and expended, is more than enough to take care of the needs of the sector in this country, if managed properly. And if we don't have ghost students and ghost schools and stories like this where the shame over bursaries where money has been given out and some of those students cannot be found. Waruku?
Yes. What you're saying is correct. 640 billion for the financial year 2024-2025 is a lot of money. 625 billion for the financial year 2023-2024 was a lot of money. How much of that reached the classroom? Because you see, for us, that is where work happens. All these other factors must converge to ensure that classroom things happen there, and even co-curriculum things also happen. You can write very little about that. And that's why you're saying our approach is that we are not just talking about allocation, but we are saying spent and qualitatively spent, not buying a biro pen at 100 bob when you can get it at 10 shillings, because that eats into the funding. So the corruption that is inherent there must also be removed. And by the way, we are also the one, we've done this assessment, and we've said that Kenya, with the resources we have, we can actually provide free compulsory education
because
for all our learners from the kindergarten to the university.
I'm sorry, because right now, this fiasco that we are calling free education in Kenya right now is not free.
It's not free.
It is not free education. Because free education means that you as a child, with the assistance of your guardians or your parents, get up in the morning, you put on a uniform, and you present yourself to school.
Yes.
That is it. Everything else.
You present yourself to school.
Everything
you're taking good care of there. You come back.
That's what free education is. You do not spend an extra penny. You do not buy a book. You don't do anything. So even this fiasco of free education is not the case. And I still insist that the 640 billion shillings we're talking about this year is more than enough.
Is more than enough
to make sure that education is free in this country.
We know that will require just a little on top to make it free for everyone from that early grade to the university.
What's a little on top?
Because our estimates are not reaching 1 trillion. Our estimate is just under 1 trillion. But we have a formula we are using because we've done this kind of costing. Of course, I need to inform you also. Remember when the Moi era and the Kibaki aspirant wanted to make Kenya feel that we can actually offer free primary education. At that time, it was just free primary education. And Moi said, with all my experience as vice president for so many years, almost 15, and as a president for 24 years, I'll tell you, Kenya cannot afford that. And Uhuru was his candidate. They said they could not. But NAC with Kibaki, they said, no, this thing is possible.
It can be done.
It can be done. And indeed, he appointed Saitoti and Professor Anyang when they sat, because Anyang was the planning minister at the time, they actually realized it was possible. And from there, they started scaling it up, said even at the secondary level, we can actually have a free day secondary. And you could also relate it to the fact that there's increase in the revenue generation, tax collection. Tax collection does not mean you add other taxes. No. So I think let the Gen Zs not misquote me or misunderstand me. Just the efficiency increased so that we generated more and more resources would ensure those resources become available for education. And fortunately, I think we stumbled along the way, because instead of looking at how do we even cost the needs, educational needs, as of today, if we are to go by the example that the university showed us, I think that's a total disaster.
Okay.
Sorry.
Perhaps my question would be, because some of these conversations, when we have them, we want to see the end results.
Yes.
Aren't we being counterproductive at this point? And if we are not, because I'm looking at the whole thing and you having put it in context and you having expounded on this, I think this is a fallacy. What we have is a fallacy. But to what end are we having these conversations? And at this point in time, what can be done? What can be done at this point?
At this point, let's start with what we have. I'll not go biblical. You say, what is in your hand? Use it. We have resources in our hands. We have 640 billion shillings. Quick things, we need teachers for the JSS. 2 years of not learning is not helping us. Those learners think that actually, so junior SS is supposed to be that space, holidaying, or things which are really not very serious. We need to make them understand that is a very determining point in their life, in their academic path. So we need to have these teachers, the 57,000 of them that are interns, converted into permanent and pensionable, but they are not even enough. We need to start thinking of how do we recruit more. I like it when the Ruto administration keep on saying we are even going to recruit 20,000. Let's not make it as a speech. I would be really keen to check that the TSC has been given the additional resources, and then that they have advertised and they are recruiting. Because we need to bridge that gap as quickly as possible. The capitation that goes to schools, let me tell you, sorry to tie this thing, because there are many things which are at play.
Layers.
When the floods happened, many schools were really destroyed. Elimu Bora did some rapid survey. We had that report the researcher launched. And what we were indicating is that those cracked classrooms, the walls, the teachers are still getting in there. The children are sitting here, but they know that the security or the safety of this building is being compromised. So we're saying there's a way in which some of those remedies should have been done. So the capitation grant, which should have been remitted early enough, instead of waiting for December, so that we are now quickly disbursing so that we clear with this year and start the new year.
But do we really ever clear the year? There's always
a logjam. They keep piling.
There's always a backlog.
They keep piling. They keep piling. And that's why I think, Ken, you're very clear. What must we do just to ensure that at least we break these barriers and this conundrum?
Are there things we can do?
There's so many things we can do. I started by indicating the funding must be streamlined, must go to school, and must be used accountably for the educational resources. 2, we also require, I think, the element which to me is missing here a lot is the oversight from the parliament. Because the parliament, when the public raises these matters, they quickly summon the CS, and to them it's like they've done their job. This is the time I would be expecting to see even some field visits for them to ascertain that what they're being told is actually working. I would have expected that when the media did project to us how the first years in Kisii, that was last year, Kisii, I think there were 6 or 8, roomed in a 10 by 10 with only mattresses there, not even a desk, not even funds to buy academic material. And those are university students, dignify also the levels of this education. I would have expected that the oversight they do is they visit and tell you that indeed what we are being told is happening.
Who's supposed to do that? You came this is coming from a time where education officers are supposed to fill that very function. And somebody a couple of months ago actually said the fact that the qualitative assessment aspect of education in this country is non-existent.
Though unfortunately, those officials you are referring to comply to what has been
so it doesn't exist.
The executive.
So it doesn't exist.
They are just there, just to affirm what has been. Let me give you an example. You remember when the floods happened, because that one we also did the research. The schools were asked to give a status account of how the situation is in those areas before the schools could reopen. They were given up to 12. That was the Friday was 8th. I think it was a Friday of 8th of May or something. So, but before that Friday, I think why I'm getting the 12th date in my head, you can reconcile. But they were given that date before 2 days before the final date of them submitting those returns. It was declared that the schools will resume the following Monday.
Yeah.
So what informed the decision for that resumption, even when some schools were still underwater, submerged?
Yes.
So there's a way in which, why I tell you, I'm just giving you that as an example of why you should not rely so heavily on that infrastructure on the ground, because they don't inform what happens here. What is decided here,
the top informs what happens
on the ground, which is at variance with the reality on the ground.
Why then do we see that happens consecutively from leader to leader to leader? Why?
It's because accountability in Kenya, I think, is something that is just a buzzword. None of us is committed to follow it through and through. Because when we say exact accountability, ensure that what you say is what you mean, and it can be verified, it can be checked by other parties who are not even interested in knowing how you are affiliated politically. Unfortunately, they've also infused those political thinking into the education. Part of it is what is causing the problems. I would rather a situation where, because the education sector, there's a lot of talk about public participation, consultation with stakeholders, and all. It is there in black and white in most of our policy documents. Look at the Basic Education Act. It's there that when you are even taking your child to be registered in a school and all that, you should not be asked for a penny. It is there that tuition should not be asked of a child, a citizen of this country, except a foreigner who wants to enroll a child somewhere. And even with that, the BOM will supposed to determine. But you realize that in what obtains is tuition is being charged at basic education level. The law says no. You take your child to be registered, you're asked about registration fees and all that, and nothing happens. So accountability, I'm using this just to tell you how accountability is something that is just a buzzword. We just theorize, but nobody really takes it effectively. And for me, when everybody else has failed, Parliament should not fail. Because Parliament is the one that has that, what do you call it, the big stick. Because they can compel compliance.
We call it oversight.
Yes, but they can compel compliance.
Yes, they can. Yeah. Their powers are known. But I want to talk about a low-hanging fruit. Huh?
Yes, please.
With this, you painted a very interesting picture with the JSS system, and we wanted aloud with you how it is they insisted that it must be domiciled in the what?
Primary.
Yes, and yet with the new system, as children move up, the secondary schools would have classes which didn't have students.
Yes.
So, and they have the facilities.
Yes.
So, this is not. It doesn't require very profound thinking. So, explain to us so that at least I need to understand. So, what is it that we're dealing with here?
Even right now, City, I think what you are alluding to, let's use that fruit, the orange you mentioned. We are not having KCP candidates.
No.
We finished last year.
Yeah.
Next year, 2025, there will not be any Form 1. But there'll be those classrooms and the boarding facilities, and most day schools will be having them empty. But then you're saying they must still just be in primary, where even those laboratories don't exist. The teachers are not adequate. That's a low-hanging fruit. Why don't we take a decision and say that let's utilize the spaces that are being vacated?
At that time,
yes.
Probably the reasoning was the JSS pupils or students,
yes.
if they were domiciled in secondary schools,
yes.
they would have looked more superior than the class 7 and 8s who are transitioning at that time. But at this time, that argument cannot suffice anymore.
Stand.
So right now, it's possible to transition them. I'm still looking at a possibility of ever knowing how the president came up with this thing that was implemented and why eventually they thought domiciling them in primary was the best reason. If not for the fact that the superiority thing would have complicated matters for junior school and for class 7s and 8s who are transitioning. I'm looking for the other reason and I can't find it.
It doesn't exist.
If the president is the one who's pronouncing them himself on these matters,
yes,
I want to assume that he's pronouncing what he has been told
or how
by
he's
the
been
relevant
advised.
ministries.
Briefed adequately, yeah.
Exactly. But again, I know the health ministry has individuals who are trained in costing. Does the education ministry have such people?
they do.
Okay. So
They do.
They do.
At the Jogo House.
Yes.
That is what is supposed to be. That's the link that they have even to the treasury. They can even help get more detailed assistance from there to help them in the planning. Costing, how much do you require? And before they even bring the estimate, they're supposed to be helped.
People who've studied that particular discipline,
Yes.
believe me, can break this thing down for you in ways that will actually make you shout for joy.
Yes.
So which means they know.
They know.
And they know what can work and what can't work. But clearly with what we have, they're not being listened to.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think that because the person at the top knows everything. Probably. I want to challenge you. This hot seat, maybe ask Sir William Samoei Ruto, the president, to come and sit. Because this is
It's very
a policy
possible.
forum.
It's possible.
That
Very
not,
possible
not where
this
he is comfortable and he calls people and all that. Just ask him so that this very direct question and open the line so that Kenyans can also call him and ask.
Do you think?
Because that would help us a great deal.
So even
Otherwise,
as you
they're
wind down,
giving
do
our
you
children a
really?
road deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it is intentional. Do you really think that the things that are happening in this country, look at the messages that are being sent in the morning, I can't send my child to school for school fees issues. Do you really think that the sad state of school infrastructure that we see is unbeknownst to the president, is unbeknownst to the CS? For goodness sake, they must know. So for me, it is an intentional decision to allow things to continue in the manner in which they have been.
Let me assert a
And
fact.
the question is why?
Let me assert a fact. Majority of them have no children in these schools we are talking about.
And that's the reason why.
That could
That's
be part
why-
of the reason. And for me, I think that is why they don't care. That is why they don't.
Was there money? I see we have a few minutes, but was money provided for this transition? Because that's another place we should look. Was there money to force these pupils to be domiciled in the primary schools? Was there some money that was expended?
The money was always there. And in fact, they even asked the schools to open another account. You remember?
Yes, they did.
Primary schools used to open to have that account for the small 1,200 per child. And here they were being told for every child, 15,000 is coming.
Is coming.
You remember that?
Yes,
And
which has been reduced significantly over the years.
So the money was there. And
There is your answer.
that's the answer. Now,
And unfortunately, this is a big problem, and it is a big one. And when we talk about the crisis that we have, it is a crisis. It does not look good, and we must continue to push because we're talking about foundational pillars for this country.
Even before I know the time is
You
over.
have literally 10 seconds.
Actually, what is happening? Look at the KCSE students of 2024. 2020, when they were doing KCP Corona. Actually, these are students who joined high school in August. On August 2nd of 2021. Meaning that they have barely just finished 3 years. And they're supposed to be sitting KCSE again. Now strikes are there. You know, I think this kind of a thing make the younger generation become so angry. So we must reach out to them and help them see that we actually care. We know the challenges they are facing. But it must start from the government. And the head of state is responsible to ensure that the right things are done. Not just spoken about. I think we are tired of the speaking.
Indeed.
Yeah.
FM Boaz Waruku has been our guest this hour as we have been discussing an education in crisis. He's the strategy and policy advisor, Elimu Bora working group. It doesn't end here. It definitely continues, and we can't keep quiet about it.
Please call me when there are good things we celebrate in education.
Let's all work towards the good things.
Shall we? Rejuvenate my spirit. Thank you.
Indeed. Asante Sana, good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.